There are individuals such as yourself who equate the RSS or the Congress party, for instance, that equates the RSS with the ISIS and Boko Haram. How does this square, sir?
I think the important fact is very clever. My friend just now has very cleverly redefined something. He's talking about a civilizational truth. The civilizational truth about India cannot be frozen 1400 years ago or 2000 years ago. It is an important segment, important element, and important base of the Indian civilization. But an Indian civilization is not Hindu civilization. Indian civilization is truly Indian, an amalgam of Hindu and Islamic civilization. Now you can't say that Taj Mahal is a distortion of our civilization. You can't say that the Mughal rule was a distortion of our civilization.
Now, therefore, it is Mr. Khurshid's position that 52 Islamic countries can have a Muslim identity, over 100 countries can have a Christian identity, but somehow a Hindu majority Bharat with a Hindu civilizational heritage is not entitled to the basic right of the assertion of its identity. This, according to me, flies in the face of logic, as well as flies in the face of equal treatment of every community and identity to assert its core identity.
Salman Khurshid, look, you wrote a book. The book was challenged in court, its release. There was a ban on its publication. Of course, that was thrown out. It's called Sunrise Over Ayodhya, Nation Undina Times, where you allegedly compared Hindutva with the Islamic State and Boko Haram, etc. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, of course. We also had a conversation about that. You know that Mohan Bhagwat, who represents the RSS that has or subscribes to a Hindutva worldview, has talked about the concept of a Hindu Rashtra, and it is not divorced really from a concept which we all recognize, which is Hinduness, which is quite open and tolerant. It presages really not a way of life, but a view on life. So it is quite open. Yet there are individuals such as yourself who equate the RSS or the Congress party, for instance, that equates the RSS with the ISIS and Boko Haram. How does this square, sir?
Well, look, we have to be extremely cautious and careful with words. There is an issue the Congress party has with the RSS, but don't confuse that with what I said. I didn't talk about the RSS. I talked about a distorted form of Hindutva. There is nothing wrong with Hindutva per se, but if Hindutva is used for a distorted mentality, just as Islam is used for a distorted mentality under ISIS and Boko Haram, then both have to be condemned. There is no right of Hindutva not to be condemned despite being violent, despite being disruptive, just as they have no right not to be condemned. But be that as it may, I think the important fact is very clever. My friend just now has very cleverly redefined something. He's talking about a civilizational truth. The civilizational truth about India cannot be frozen 1400 years ago or 2000 years ago. It is an important segment, important element, and important base of the Indian civilization. But an Indian civilization is not Hindu civilization. Indian civilization is truly Indian, an amalgam of Hindu and Islamic civilization. Now you can't say that Taj Mahal is a distortion of our civilization. You can't say that the Mughal rule was a distortion of our civilization. If you do that, then there is no scope for conversation. The conversation has to be that don't defile or don't redefine anything that is a core part of our understanding of a religious or a cultural ethos. But you can't just pretend that nothing has happened in India, hasn't moved forward. India has moved forward in many ways. I'll give you a very trite example. India considers Sunday to be a holiday in a week, unlike Arab countries that treat Friday as a holiday in the week. But if we were to follow Hindu ethos, we might have made it Tuesday, or we might have made it Friday, depending upon which sect of Hinduism you follow. But it wouldn't be Sunday. Sunday we followed from the Christian ethos, and we followed it because it was given to us by the British. Now, if somebody just insists that they want to change Sunday to a Friday or Sunday to a Tuesday, then you are really trying to remove an added dimension of your life, of your national life, that has grown incrementally over the years. We've removed the statues that the British had planted in our country. Do we want to remove the calendar as well? Do we want to change the calendar as well? It's an important question, and we can't just redefine saying you have to have another calendar, which is a Hindu calendar, because we are a Hindu country. We've moved to a modern calendar, and that modern calendar doesn't hurt a Hindu or a Muslim in any way. The Hijri calendar is still there, the Hindu calendar is still there, and whatever coordinates are required are given. I don't think it creates any crisis for our national life, merely because we holiday on Sunday and we take Saturdays as half days. I don't think it creates a crisis, unless somebody wants to create a crisis the way they're trying to do in Karnataka.
Okay. Very quick, Sai Deepak. Yes.
So I'm happy that there is an admission from a senior member of the Congress party that Hindutva per se is not evil and that it is acceptable. It is distortion of a particular ideology that he has a problem with. I don't think I can have an issue with that particular position at all. After all, any position when distorted and taken to its extremes is certainly not acceptable. But this concession that's been made by Mr. Khurshid, I think it's worthy of taking note of, and I'm thankful for this particular concession. Now, coming to the second issue, why is it that when we speak of, let's say, Indian civilization, or let's say the treatment of minorities in this country, there is never a discussion with respect to the Parsis, or for that matter, the Jews of this particular country? There is only one good reason for that. What is it? They too follow an iconoclastic, monotheistic faith system or a worldview. However, they have managed to blend in as far as this particular country is concerned, without losing what belongs to them essentially and what makes them different. Nobody in this country prior to the constitution or after the constitution has ever insisted upon their conversion to Hinduism if they have to be accepted as part of this particular society, to say when you're at your most vulnerable and you've been kicked out of your countries, when you come here you have to turn Hindu. Nobody ever insisted on that. That is the fundamental nature of this particular civilization, which means what? You don't need to give up what belongs to you, but as long as you show a tendency or a propensity to live with others, then there is no problem and you become accepted as part of this particular civilization. Now, the problem with Mr. Khurshid's proposition, and here I would certainly request that I certainly deliver a copy of my book to him, because scholarly speaking and scientifically speaking, as well as from a humanities perspective, his position is completely wrong. Every school of humanities, when it starts asking what is the native identity of a particular society or a culture, has a specific cutoff period. So, for instance, when you ask Latin Americans, what is the core identity of these countries and cultures in Latin America, they identify prior to 1498, so to speak, before Christopher Columbus effectively set foot on that particular soil and started the process of evangelization of Latin America. In Bharat, therefore, to say that there is a cutoff period to identify what is the native identity of this particular country is not wrong. However, what would be wrong would be to say those people who subscribe to these faith systems which do not emanate from this particular land or do not originate from this particular land should be kicked out. That's a very different position to take. That would be an incorrect position to take. However, in order to accommodate someone who's come to this particular land, whether through peaceful means or violent means, ultimately their successors and their, let's say, descendants, so to speak, are here. You wish to accommodate them without giving up what belongs to you. Now, therefore, it is Mr. Khurshid's position that 52 Islamic countries can have a Muslim identity, over 100 countries can have a Christian identity, but somehow a Hindu majority Bharat with a Hindu civilizational heritage is not entitled to the basic right of the assertion of its identity. This, according to me, flies in the face of logic, as well as flies in the face of equal treatment of every community and identity to assert its core identity. I'm sorry to say, this particular argument seems positively a weaponization of secularism to the detriment of Hindus to assert their basic cultural identity and civilizational identity. This cannot be accepted. So I am not presenting something that is clever or intelligent or cunning. I am presenting something that has been the treatment of communities and cultures across the world. And this is the logic on the basis of which you decide what is the native identity or the core culture of a particular geography, so to speak. Therefore, I am not saying something that is outside the realm of reasonableness.
Okay, well, viewers, we've heard two sides. This debate can go on and on. We have to apply a cutoff, and that cutoff is a break. But before that, okay, Mr. Khurshid, very quickly, yes, I'll give you...
Blacks have no rights in America. America should go back to being a white country. Blacks have no right. And Obama should not have been president of the United States. I think this is a flawed argument, but you don't have enough time to get this to go forward. We'll have to talk another day, and I'll certainly read his book, but I think it's a completely flawed argument. I have no concern with Islamic countries. My concern is about India, and you can't talk about India in terms of Islamic countries or Christian countries.
Okay, quick response, Sai Deepak, quick response.
It's a false parallel that Mr. Khurshid is drawing. Nobody has ever said and can ever say that a non-Hindu can never occupy a constitutional position or become the prime minister of the country. That's never been the statement that's been made. I repeat, equal treatment of all communities for the purposes of all positions does not militate or is not at loggerheads with the assertion of the core identity of the land. These are not conflicting positions. These are not mutually exclusive positions. Unfortunately, it seems like Mr. Khurshid wants to treat them in silos. That's all I have to say.